your papers at page 3 is a letter from Darren providing links to the Northern Ireland Marine Special Areas of Conservation and the Marine Conservation Zones that some letter provided copies of the 3 acts to be amended by the bill with additional text in red. As that runs to over 180 pages, staff have only printed 1 copy for now. That copy is available from the committee staff if you wish. And I welcome John Turrington, Mark McGahan, Paddy Campbell, Shane and Liam Devlin. They're very welcome back. Okay.
Thank you.
So we asked you to again give us your brief and then we'll ask you. Okay.
Okay, thank you again. Because I need to reintroduce the table here. We'd like to begin by again noting the importance of the clauses in the bill for ensuring that we continue to comply in the longer term with EU legislation across both inland and sea fisheries, and for ensuring enforcement powers remain both effective and proportionate. Also note that both ministers would of course prefer that all, or at least most of the provisions of the bill were taken forward sooner rather than later. As we mentioned last week, the permit powers in Clause 1 would allow us to ensure fishing activity could continue where restrictions, such as those imposed by MCZs, for example, might otherwise prohibit it. The same is true for the amendments to the licensing rules under Section 4 of the 1967 Act, as contained in Clause 3. The powers of enforcement, Clause 4 and 5, and the proposed increase in penalties, Clause 7 and 8, would help us avoid further criticism from the Commission going forward for not having having insufficient powers, or indeed inadequate deterrence. The powers in relation to inland fisheries in Clause 10 would ensure compliance with the EU Services Directive, and the changes set out in 11 to 13 would help DECON meet obligations under the Water Framework Directive. The fixed penalty clause powers in clauses 14 and 15 would help us improve compliance, allow people to avoid the stigma of a criminal record where appropriate, and in general allow enforcers to constitute in the most serious offences. This, as with the permit powers at clause 1, by far the largest clauses, are enabling powers and of course would come to the committee again as detailed subordinate legislation in time and before having effect. All these things are important in their own right and would future-proof aspects of the legislation, avoid future criticism and ensure legislation in these aspects remains fit for purpose. But as the Minister has said in her letter, which I understand you received this morning, she recognised the bill has come to the committee late in the day, and recognising the committee's offer to help in ensuring that the most urgent clause in particular can come into law and remove the threat of infraction both in the short and longer term. Therefore, given the urgent importance of what is currently in Clause 9 of the bill, she is content that we seek a way to deal with this matter. To deliver this, consideration had been given to dealing with the via subordinate legislation. However, while this could help implement the specific EU control regulation that was the specific subject of a mission earlier this year, it is clear that the underlying problem will remain, and the Commission will remain unhappy that we cannot directly enforce all EU fisheries legislation immediately that it comes into operation, as they would expect to do so. Furthermore, given the potential size of the subordinate legislation to implement the control regulation, it is difficult to see how this might be brought forward in a timetable that would satisfy the Commission. As the Minister notes in her letter, even if this piece of subordinate legislation could be brought forward in a timetable that is agreeable to the Commission to allow it to suspend further action, EU legislation is continually being introduced and updated, and the Commission will be aware that the underlying problem still exists and we will continue to live under the threat of EU action. In order to avoid further action, any new fisheries regulations would have to be implemented speedily, and even then this does not impact on the immediate application of EU law that I have said the Commission believes should be the case. Given the amount of legislation on the horizon in this area, it is likely that any short-term fix will only serve to store problems further down the line. With respect to any proposal to start again with a new bill, there is a concern that having to seek executive approval to the introduction and get agreement of the Assembly, a motion to agree accelerated passage of a new smaller bill might in itself be risky. With a bill already in the Assembly that can deal with this matter, it may be better to seek and progress it rather than start again at this late stage. The Minister would then only progress at consideration stage any clauses that the Committee is content that they have had time to thoroughly consider and are entirely content with. For the Committee may only be Clause 6 if that's as well. In conclusion, the legislation is important. Is important that allows us to meet EU requirements to be able to directly enforce the CFP, to demonstrate to the EU that we have adequate enforcement powers and that we have sufficient deterrence for offending and adequate penalties for those that do offend. That ensures DECON can meet obligations under the EU Service Directive and the Water Framework Directive. As noted, we recognise the limited time available in the mandate for the legislation to become law. we're happy to take any further questions you might have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The Commission is unhappy that we cannot directly enforce all EU fishery legislation immediately. Does this happen in England, Scotland and Wales and the Republic of Ireland? Do these regions have the ability to enforce all EU fisheries legislation immediately?
In my understanding, it's just us.
Yes, just us. Why is that?
There was a change made in English legislation in the past to allow it. We have the same legislation across the UK. I can't speak for the Republic. There's a clearly okay as it is, but the piece of legislation that we use in Northern Ireland is the same piece of legislation that covers across the UK, and it was amended by England in 2009 and latterly in 2014-13 in Scotland, and it was at that point that we realised that perhaps we needed to do something about it and included it in the proposals to bring forward legislation. So if there was if it ever did come to the issue of EU action, it would fall on the Northern Ireland to deal with it within any case that we take against the UK.
Okay. Any other members? Robin?
John, just at the start, maybe a point of clarification. You were referring to clause 9. Is it clause 9 or clause 6?
Clause 6. My apologies. My apologies.
Aye.
I noticed that too.
Somebody's read the bill. Thank you, Mr. Swan.
No problem. Just in case you're trying to slip something else through.
Any other members? Any questions?
I had trouble reading letters the right way.
Are you looking upside down?
Sorry, can I ask, I know there's parts of the provision of this bill is also between ourselves and the decal committee. Is there any thing that would stop the decal committee taking forward some of their parts?
Perhaps my colleagues are better.
No, certainly we met with the Cal committee last week, and I emphasised that these were key areas for us. I mean, if you look at the fixed penalty issue, we have people now who are being prosecuted for a minor offence such as using sweet corn at a decal water. The alternative to have a fish penalty notice rather than prosecution is obviously advantageous. It doesn't give people a criminal record. Under the EU Services Directive, we are required to have the process for applications online. That system is now online. The impediment there is that people from outside have to seek a Justice of the Peace approval before their application is finally finalised. So it does represent a break in the online system. The stuff around protection of fish is also very important. We have grids and grills that are currently in place that do not give any protection at all for eels. And the research we've done from AFBI would indicate that currently the number of fish or the likely mortalities are likely to be in the region of between 15 and 30%. It's a very key species for us. We have all EU management plans in place to protect these species, and it's critically important that we get the protection and protected hydro sites for these species. So we see the number that we have been through the calculation has been fairly simple, we hope, from our perspective anyway. We're certainly happy to answer any questions the committee has in respect to them, and we would hope that these also would proceed during this time as well.
Okay, all right, Robin?
Yep.
Okay, Joanna?
Apologies for missing your briefing. I have read through it, maybe not as much detail as Robin Swan, but I have been through it anyway. Can you maybe explain, I know you maybe have covered this in your introduction, why when the EU Commission ordered a pilot scheme back in July, we didn't have legislation then coming through with us to December?
The Commission were here in January and noted this, and their formal report came in July. We told them at the time that we had a fix, and the fix was the bill, and that the bill timetable would have taken us through to the end of the mandate. Unfortunately, drafting of the bill took longer than we could have anticipated, and getting the clearances, the necessary clearances to get it to here, to where we are now.
It's just, a note the Minister said that Clause 6 in particular was extremely important. I just wondered why that delay. Given then that the consultation of this bill took place towards the end of last year, and there were 57 responses, do you feel you should gauge industry views again? Are you satisfied that that's...
We're saying, and I'm not putting my colleagues on the spot, that the vast majority of those responses were in relation to inland decal fisheries matters, and that, as a response to the consultation and other matters, my colleagues certainly amended what they required, and that, for the most part, what they have included in the bill will have no great difficulties, we'd have thought, for stakeholders. Similarly, with our own, we are constantly in discussions with them, and genuinely don't think there's anything major in what has been provided, given the support generally of the provisions or the proposals, that would have any great difficulty with our stakeholders. Clearly, they will want to have a look at the detail, and depending on the outcome of this and the committee review, we'd be keen to write to them, at least let them know that it's out there, and give the detail. Let them see the
You've
detail.
done your best with the high level of detail, and
I think we for the most part, we tried the consultation set out, knowing that when you get down to the drafting, that there are details in there that you maybe don't reflect in that sense at consultation. But we think generally there's nothing in the legislation that wasn't covered, and as best as we could at the high level during the consultation.
is there a danger, do you think, that if we have an emergency issue with the threat of infringement, and while this bill attempts to deal with it, are we maybe seeing an attempt to have a whole raft of other issues dealt with as well? Can you provide the committee then with that you're bringing the industry provision with you in this bill?
She did.
Confident with that?
Well, we've already had legal advice. We're looking now at the possibility of just moving one clause in the bill, so just before you arrive, so that maybe would...
But as I say, the commitment's certainly there to if it is only, if you only get the chance to look at the one, then that's be it. But I mean, I have set out that the others will remove the opportunity, some of them, the position that we're back trying to force things through in a big hurry to avoid further conversations about the urgency of bringing forward legislation, including the penalties and the CAL issues.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other members?
Chair.
Yes?
Yes, thanks.
Yes,
Have you had any correspondence there, say, from Tunisia?
Yeah, I mean, we've consulted fairly widely on the CAL issues, certainly, and certainly these would be right up in terms of their priority as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the protection of a lake, for example, and obviously the things around screening and the protection of eels is a very important one. We, under the EU, we're required to have 40% escapement in terms of silver eels. It's critical that essentially every part of the whole catchment is actually meeting those requirements. So we're trying to get as many eels through as possible. So that's the intention with our provision of the 10mm screen, is to ensure that we're actually protecting eel stocks, and that currently isn't there presently. We have a grading size of 5.1. Scientific advice suggests that we should have it, depending on the angle of the screen, maybe as low as 9mm. We've gone for a 10 as a kind of the worst case scenario for a vertical screen. But obviously we have exemptions in place as well, so that if there are better conditions that are there and the operator puts us in, then they don't have to comply with the legislation. We offer an exemption. And we've had a number of operators who come through beforehand asking advice about obviously sites that they're going to develop, and we've advised them that we are seeking the 10mm screen. We have no adverse comments from them in respect to this there. As long as they know in advance, that only applies to new ones, new sites coming in, they can then cater for within that there. Screening is always in place at an intake, anyway, to prevent debris and stuff like that there as well. And obviously under the Act currently they have to put a fine mesh screen or a fine mesh covering over that there for a certain period of time. We're just saying that we now need this for a longer period because we have other species to look after, such as lamprey and eels in particular, and there's a lot more movements than people would have originally thought, other than salmonids.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, members, anyone else? Don't have it? Okay, thank you very much again.
Thanks very much. Okay.
Okay. Okay, members, we're moving to closed session. We'll now have a discussion in the committee.
Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.
Okay, members, so the committee is agreeing to do clause 6 and what is needed in relation to clause 6. We also agreeing to write to Cal
Close one.
asking them in regards to clauses 10, 11, 12 and 13 to get their response in regard to that. We're also going to write to the Minister about a press release on the issue. Is it okay? And at the second speech of the second stage, we'll reflect this decision by the committee today. And we are going to publish the letter from the Minister today. And we're going to move just clause 6 or
Committee motion need to move 6.
the committee motion then will need to move clause 6. Is everyone happy with that? That's the decision of the committee.
Great.
Great. Okay. That is right. Very good.
Right. We're
We want agenda 4, Rural Needs Bill, formal clause by clause scrutiny of the bill and discussion on amendments. Can I advise members that the purpose of the session is to consider the amendments that DART has put forward and seek agreement or otherwise on them. It will also be the last opportunity for members to indicate whether they wish to see any further amendments or to seek clarity on any issue. At our meeting on the 12th of January 2016, we will commence the formal clause-by-clause stage of the bill, and at that point it will be too late to seek clarity. Members may wish to have their copy of the bill in order and other relevant documents open in front of them for this part of the meeting. I refer members to the following papers in their packs. Rural Needs Bill and Explanatory and Financial Memorandum at pages 47 to 49. A summary table of the requested amendments and the DART response to each is in your table paper pack at page 20. And Hansard of the oral briefing on the 8th of December is in your table papers pack at page 25. We ask members to note how I intend to proceed with this part of the meeting today. I will ask DART officials to make a presentation which will cover the following: the matters that the committee requested amendments on, further advice that the department indicated it would seek on the mitigation of adverse impact, and the letter of intent regards clarification and definitions and guidance. Members may wish to refer to the table packs for the correspondence from DART on these issues. After DART has presented, I will open to questions from members. Once we have exhausted all questions, I will ask the officials to move away from the table into the public gallery and will then go to informal clause by clause. At this stage, members will be asked to indicate if they are content with the DART position or if they require Assembly Bill Office to draft an amendment for its consideration. Can I welcome Colette McMaster and Oscar Stewart? Very welcome, and again we asked you to make a presentation, and we will then ask you some questions in relation to this.
Thank you, Chair. Following the committee's informal clause-by-clause consideration of the bill on 8th of December, the Department has provided, in response to the committee's request, a written indication of the Minister's position on each of the amendments that the committee agreed, subject to any executive agreement that would be required. The committee has also been provided with details of the legal advice obtained by DART on the issue of mitigating adverse impact, and a letter of intent from the Minister outlining how the Department plans to clarify and guidance definitions of rural areas and social and economic needs. We intend today to outline the Minister's position on the committee's amendments. We'll also highlight the key points in the legal advice in relation to the issue of mitigating adverse impact. Turning firstly to the committee's amendments to the bill, I propose to go through these as they're set out in the matrix that the clerk to the committee forwarded following last week's meeting. In relation to each, I will indicate the Minister's decision on whether she wishes to support the amendment, subject to any executive agreement required, or to oppose the amendment. The committee agreed to request Dard's comments on 4 amendments to Clause 1. First amendment, page 1, line 2, is to change "a public authority must consider rural needs" to "a public authority must have due regard to rural needs." The Minister has indicated that she wishes to support this amendment, subject to the executive agreement. In considering the amendment, the Minister has reflected on the views expressed by stakeholders in their written and oral evidence to the committee, and also the view of the committee. She agrees that a due regard duty would be a stronger duty than a duty to consider rural needs. It would require public authorities to take rural needs into account in developing policies, strategies and plans, and designing and delivering public services. Her view is that this higher duty would make the rural needs legislation even stronger. While a due regard duty would require some additional administrative resource, that would be proportionate to the better outcomes that it could deliver. The second amendment on page 1, lines 3 and 4, is to change policies, strategies and plans to policies, strategies, plans and budgets. The Minister has indicated that she will oppose this amendment to Clause 1. The reason for that decision is that the allocation of budgets is already implicit in the bill in its reference to plans. By mentioning budgets specifically in the bill, there would be the risk that courts could interpret that other aspects of plans are deliberately excluded because they've not been specifically listed. In other words, listing one aspect of plans could be interpreted by the courts as an intentional omission of others. The Minister wishes to avoid this unnecessary risk. The third amendment on page 1, line 9, is to add to the face of the bill those public authorities that are listed in the draft Local Government Community Planning Partners Order, Northern Ireland 2015. The Minister has indicated that she wishes to support this amendment, subject to executive agreement. The Minister agrees that the inclusion of the proposed community planning partners on the face of the bill would provide a good degree of cohesion across government, particularly in view of the new arrangements for community planning. There's been widespread support for the proposal to extend the bill to arm's-length bodies, given that they are often responsible for delivering services that are likely to impact on the lives of rural dwellers. Whilst the amendment would not allow time for further consultation at this stage on a specific list of bodies to be included on the face of the bill, should this proposed amendment be ultimately agreed by the Assembly, the commencement provisions within the bill will provide flexibility as to when the various provisions of the bill would come into force. This would allow for a later commencement date for those bodies in order to ensure that they have sufficient time to prepare for their new statutory duties. The Committee's fourth amendment in relation to Clause 1 was to include a provision to allow for the list of other public authorities to be reviewed within an agreed time frame. The Minister has indicated that she wishes to support this amendment, which would place an explicit and time-bound duty on DARD to review the list of public authorities. DARD would have a power under Clause 2 to bring forward subordinate legislation to make changes to that list, should that be considered necessary following the review. The Committee has proposed one amendment to Clause 2. This is on page 1, line 19, which is to change the word may to will. The effect of this would be to place a duty on DARD to provide guidance, advice and information, and to undertake commission or research on matters connected with rural needs. The Minister has indicated she wishes to support this amendment, which will strengthen DARD's role in providing support for rural proofing and the implementation of the bill. I should point out that the Office of Legislative Counsel has advised that the wording of such an amendment would be must rather than will, but this can be addressed when drafting amendments. The final amendment agreed by the Committee last week was in relation to Clause 3. This is to add on page 2, line 12, a provision that requires the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development to make an annual statement to the Assembly on the proposed monitoring report which DARD is to prepare and lay before the Assembly. The Minister has indicated that she wishes to support this amendment. She agrees the amendment would enhance the monitoring and reporting arrangements provided for in Clause 3 and would help raise the awareness of the importance of taking account of rural needs and of the availability of information relating to how public authorities discharge their statutory duty. To further address the concerns raised by stakeholders in relation to the transparency and availability of the annual monitoring report, the Ministers indicated she also wishes to propose a further amendment to Clause 3 to require DARD to publish the annual monitoring report in addition to the requirement to let before the Assembly. The Committee did not propose any amendments to clauses 4, 5, 6 or 7. Turning now to the further matter on which the Committee sought additional clarification, the Committee discussed last week the suggestion by some stakeholders to include a requirement within the Rural Needs Bill that where adverse impact is identified, public authorities should take reasonable steps to mitigate such impacts. Before coming to a view on that suggestion, the Committee agreed to request DARD to provide details of the legal advice obtained on the issue of mitigating adverse impact. On 10th of December 2015, DARD wrote to the Clerk of the Committee to set out the legal advice obtained on this matter. Legal advice indicated a number of difficulties with the suggestion. For that reason, the Ministers indicated she would be minded to oppose such an amendment to include a duty to take mitigating measures should the Committee propose one. To summarise the legal advice, there's a difference between, on the one hand, considering whether the implementation of a policy or strategy might have an adverse impact, considering whether mitigating actions might be appropriate, and, on the other hand, a duty on public authorities to take mitigating measures. Rural proofing is not intended to promote any particular objective in relation to rural areas. Rather, it's a means by which public authorities consider whether any given policy or strategy is likely to have a different impact in rural areas, make a proper assessment of those impacts if they're likely to be significant, and consider whether to adjust a policy or strategy to meet the rural needs and circumstances. The language used in legislation must be appropriate for this purpose, but must not distort overall policy making by making benefits for rural areas itself a policy objective or the subject of a duty. Considering whether there is an adverse impact and whether mitigating actions might be appropriate would be part and parcel of a duty to have due regard to rural needs, which is one of the amendments that the Committee has proposed and that the Ministers indicated she will support. A due regard duty, therefore, already includes an obligation on the public authority to consider what, if any, mitigating measures may be taken where a particular policy with which it decides to proceed has adverse impacts on rural needs. In other words, a duty to have due regard is a means of providing the appropriate levels of consideration. However, a duty to take mitigating measures would go well beyond that. It would require public authorities to carry out their functions in a particular way and would restrict the discretion of a public authority to take decisions about how it exercises its functions. I hope that the written responses on the presentation have provided the Committee with a clear picture of the Minister's position on each of the amendments agreed during the informal clause-by-clause consideration of the bill last week, and with further clarification to assist the Committee's consideration regarding the issue of mitigating adverse impact. And we're happy to take things that would be helpful.
Okay. Right, okay, thank you. First of all, there are a few potential amendments where you indicate that you're willing to make the amendment subject to executive approval. Can you expand on this? What do you mean by executive approval? When are you likely to get this? In your opinion, how likely is it that the executive will approve the amendments?
Well, there are the first duty, certainly the duty to change in the duty to consider, to have good regard, to have due regard to, is a change in the policy that was agreed by the executive, because the policy agreed was to consider. So there is a change in that respect, and that will need further executive agreement.
Okay.
Because that is a change. So, in proceeding with the bill and with the amendments, if that's what the Committee has agreed and Minister to support that, then that will go back to the executive at an early stage.
will we know by this week, there's an executive meeting this week, will we know by the 18th of December if the executive has agreed these amendments?
I don't know whether that we'll know. It's something that may be on the, consideration at the next executive meeting, or in the new year.
One would have thought it's quite important that, that it would automatically be on. I would have thought if we're under pressure to deliver this bill, I mean, I would have thought it would be very important that the executive would be looking at this sooner rather than later, I would have thought.
Sure, Minister would be very keen for executive to consider this as early as. There is the second one then, just to turn to that, would be the extent of putting the additional other public authorities on the face of the bill. Because again, that is a change to the policy that was agreed with the executive. The policy that was agreed was specifically to include provision to extend the bill to include other public authorities by means of subordinate legislation. So that again is one that will need to go and just have cover from the executive.
Okay. Can you confirm to me on this committee that you will have the actual draft amendments for the committee to consider on the 12th of January?
That is our intention, yes.
Okay, that's okay. Oliver, you wanted a question?
I just clause 2, page 1919, leave out May and insert 1.
Yep.
What a big difference.
Is that a big difference from may to will? And we're actually saying that in actually drafting the amendment, it will be must. Yeah.
That's okay, thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Robin, Robert Swan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Colette, just go back to the clause 1, page 1, lines 3 and 4. It's the including of the words on budgets.
Yeah.
The last time you were in here, you said that budgets were understood to be part of the plans, and,
Yes.
and the query was what's wrong with specifying them as separate. The word "and" surely in legal terms separates them as being different, does it not?
Well, I think since we were with the full committee last week, we've taken further legal advice on this, and in fact, that the legal advice is confirming that yes, the budgets are part of plans. So that is the risk that is there, that by starting to pick out elements of the plan and to specify specific aspects, that's if budgets are specified, that's just one aspect of a plan, but we wouldn't be then listing all other sorts of aspects.
But then the plan's still listed as a catch-all.
Yes, but the question would be, and this could be down to the court's interpretation, as to the fact that one particular aspect of a plan is highlighted could be interpreted as other aspects have been deliberately omitted. So that's the risk.
No, I'm sorry. I'm reading this. I'm reading this slightly different. But then a budget could be a standalone piece as well, rather than part of a plan.
The budget will always be part of the plan to deliver on policies and strategies or services and so on. So that's the intention of that word plan.
I just see it. I see a separation using the word "on." It's in legal parlance. Maybe it's something different.
Just clarifying really the further discussion we've had with our advisors since we last.
So what's the other parts of a plan, if not the budget?
Well, a budget will assist the plan in delivering on the plan.
I get that.
Resourcing of that.
So what's the other bits they're concerned about being pulled out and not specified?
We haven't defined what's in a plan, but it's intended to be everything that a public authority would take into account when doing its planning. Because we don't want to necessarily limit this bill and the due regard to be taken of rural needs in terms of actually defining specific aspects of their planning. So it will encompass all aspects of planning. That's the intention by this.
Okay.
Okay. Any more members? Any other member wants to ask any questions? Or we asked?
No, we're dead on.
Okay, please just go into the public gallery. Okay, thank you. Move to clause 1. The first area for potential amendment is in connection with leave out, consider and replace with due regard. Members should refer to the page 20 of the table of papers. This outlines that the Minister is prepared to support this amendment subject to agreement of the Executive. Are members content with the Dáil position on clause 1 in connection with due regard? Okay, members? Okay. Second potential amendment is in connection with leave out strategies and plans and insert strategies, plans and budgets. Members should refer to page 20 of the table of papers. This outlines that the Minister is not prepared to support this amendment. The rationale for this is also detailed and has been discussed today. Members content with the Dáil position of this on this matter?
Yep.
Okay. Go on ahead, let me hear. Who's? Raman, go on ahead.
I'm still not 100% convinced, but I suppose when it comes down, if that's the legal, have we seen a copy of that legal advice?
No.
Apart from just what?
We wouldn't see the department's legal advice.
I think what we're being told today from Colette is that basically budgets will always be part of any plan. So,
What was it?
I think we're splitting hairs probably.
What do the stakeholders want us to look at budgets as a distinct?
I don't think I have that with me.
No, that's right. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
You need to
matter.
start
Yes.
bringing all the documents with me.
But it's not.
Okay, members, well, overall position, the members content with the Dáil position in this? I think those are material. It's not, we're splitting hairs probably, but it's up to you, members.
budgets are in the plans. Run with it.
Agreed.
Read, members? Okay, great. Third potential amendment deals with inserting provision to mitigate against adverse impact. Members should refer to page 20 of the table of papers. This outlines that the Minister is not prepared to support this amendment. The rationale for this is also detailed and has been discussed today. Members content with advice that DART has received on clause 1 in connection with the provision to mitigate against adverse impact. Members, any views? Members, again, can I ask members, are they content with the advice that DART has received?
Right.
Right? Okay, members. Next matter concerns the insertion of the public bodies listed in the draft Local Government Community Planning Partners Order, Northern Ireland 2015, to the face of the bill. Members should refer to page 20 of the table of papers. This outlines that the Minister is prepared to support this amendment subject to agreement of the Executive. The rationale for this is also detailed and has been discussed today. Again, are members content with the DART position? Clause 1. Okay. The next potential amendment is in connection with the provision of a review of the public bodies listed on the face of the bill within an agreed timescale. Members should refer to pages 20 to 21 of the table of papers. This outlines that the Minister is prepared to support the amendment. The rationale for this is also detailed and has been discussed today. Members content again with the DART position on the clause 1. Okay, members?
Yep.
We will now complete our informal consideration of clause 1. Are members content with clause 1 as per proposed amendments with the proviso that the committee is yet to see the actual amendment? Okay, members. I'll move to clause 2, where we have one potential amendment. This concerns the replacement of the word may with will. Members should refer to page 21 of the table of papers. This outlines that the Minister is prepared to support this amendment, but that the replacement word be must rather than will. The rationale for this is also detailed and has been discussed today. Again, are members content with our position? Yep. Okay, members. We will now complete our informal consideration of clause 2. Are members content with clause 2 as per the proposed amendment with the proviso that the committee is yet to see the actual amendment? Okay, members? Yep. Move to clause 3. The next potential amendment is in connection with the statement of the Minister of the Assembly on the annual report. Members should refer to page 21 of the table of papers. This outlines that the Minister is prepared to support this amendment, that the amendment will include a provision to publicise the report. The rationale for this is also detailed and has been discussed today. Again, are members content with Dar's position on this? Okay. We'll now complete our informal consideration of Clause 3. Are members content with Clause 3 as per the proposed amendment, with the proviso that the committee has yet to see the actual amendment? Okay, members? Clause 4. No matters were raised in connection with Clause 4. Informally, are members content with Clause 4?
Agreed.
Okay. Clause 5. No matters were raised in connection with Clause 5. Informally, are members content with Clause 5? Okay. Clause 6, members requested the DARD provide a letter which states it intends its intent regards clarification, definitions and guidance. Are members content with the DARD letter of intent? Okay. No other matters were raised in connection with Clause 6. Informally, are members content with Clause 6? Okay. Clause 7. No matters were raised in connection with Clause 7. Informally, are members content with Clause 7? This completes our informal clause by clause. We will meet again on Tuesday, the 12th of January, to consider the actual amendments and then to complete our formal clause by clause. We don't need it. Okay. Thank you very much again. Okay. We have any other business? Okay. Agenda item 5, date and time of next meeting. The next meeting, the Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development, will take place Tuesday, 12th of January 2016 at 10:30 a.m. in Room 30, Parliament Buildings. I declare the meeting adjourned.